Just checking for the opening. Okay, for the opening sessions. Is Professor Agbo with us? I see that Ambassador Khattab is with us. Welcome, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Refile, Honorable Sarah would be joining us shortly.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, colleagues. Please note that the webinar has started. We already have 7 attendees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's session. Thank you very much for making the time to be here with us today. We are just going to give a few more of our participants, maybe 1 more minute to join us, and then we will kick off with the proceedings of the day. Thank you so much, and looking forward to a great discussion. All right, I believe that we can kick off. So good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to all of our esteemed guests, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, representatives from the Ministries of Education in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya, development partners, members of civil society, and all participants who are joining us from across Africa this afternoon, all protocols observed. We would like to welcome you to the official launch of the Back to School project. On behalf of the Graça Machel Trust and our partners, the African Child Policy Forum and the Pan-African Research Services, we would like to thank you for joining us today for this discussion as we launch this project focused on a critical issue in our continent, that of out-of-school children. We will start by just giving you a brief overview of the proceedings of the day, where we will run through the program so that you know that what we are going to be discussing for the next hour and a half. Can we please have the projection of the program? Thank you so much. So to start off with, the first part of our discussion today will basically be setting the tone around the context and the specific issues of out-of-school children, the plight of out-of-school children on our continent, and the impact on Africa's social economic development. We have very esteemed keynote speaker who will be delivering those remarks for us. From part 1, we will move to a panel discussion where we will hear from representatives of Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania, being the 3 implementation countries of this project, to share experiences and results in terms of existing accelerated learning models within their contexts. And we will link that discussion to research and scaling research. There will be an opportunity for yourselves as audience members to also participate in that discussion during the question and answer session. And then from there, we will close off the day's proceedings with messages of support, a solidarity statement, and a call to action for all of us to do our part in terms of helping children to go back to school. So before we begin, I would just like us to please note a few critical housekeeping logistics. Firstly, please note that all mics and videos of participants have been closed just to minimize any disruptions. However, we do please encourage you to introduce yourselves in the chat if you've not done so already. And also you are welcome to share any questions and comments in the chat throughout the day's discussions. Please also note that for the sake of timekeeping, particularly for our speakers, I will be signaling with signposting when we have 3 or 1 minute remaining for a particular session in today's discussion. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And with that, I would like to hand over to the Chief Executive Officer of the Graça Machel Trust, Ms. Melissa Mugenyi, who will open the event for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Silwe, and good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our chief guest speaker, who should be joining us soon, Her Excellency Professor Sarah Mbi Enau Anyang Agbor, Vice Board Chair of FAWE and former AU Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, Honorable Mashura Katab, member of the Committee of the African Committee of Excellence on the Rights and Welfare of the Child and Special Rapporteur on Education, representatives from the Ministries of Education in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya, Reverend Bishop Michael Musonganzila from the Diocese of Musoma, and all esteemed guests, thank you for joining us. Together with partners from the Africa Child Policy Forum, the Diocese of Musoma, and African Research Services, the Graça Machel Trust is privileged to launch this research initiative with the support of the Global Partnership for Education's Knowledge and Innovation Exchange, or KICS. There are 52 million out of schools in Africa. What binds us all here today is our collective goal as partners and collaborators to ensure we're making meaningful and deliberate contributions towards reducing that alarming figure. Our research aims to generate evidence supporting scaling up accelerated learning models for out-of-school rural girls in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. As a continent, we know that the solutions reside with us. It follows then that our focus is on contextually rooted African models of accelerated learning. This initiative is built upon the work of the Graça Machel Trust in the Mara, Tanzania, where we've worked together with the Ministry of Education and other partners to integrate 23,000 out-of-school children back into the school system. We are hopeful that the evidence and learning generated through this initiative will be scaled up in the 3 target countries and possibly beyond. Thank you very much. Back to you, host.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa, for those opening remarks and also reminding us of the urgency and the importance of this project and why we are here today. I believe that we are still waiting for Her Excellency Agbor to join us. So in the meantime, based on Melissa's remarks, we would like to engage you as the audience in a participatory poll, first of all, to see where our knowledge lies in terms of the scourge of out-of-school children, and also what is our understanding with that, particularly as it applies to out-of-school girls. So I'll ask my colleagues to please launch the first poll, and please feel free to openly participate. before we proceed with the rest of the agenda for today. Okay, it actually looks like Professor Agbo has joined us. So I think rather than do the poll, we will still go ahead with her address. So again, it is our absolute pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Professor Susan Anyang Agbo, the Vice Chairperson of the Forum for African Women Educationalists and the former AU Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, to deliver this afternoon's keynote address. Over to you, Madam.
Hi, Refilwe. I just need Brenda to give me co-host rights so I can upgrade Professor Sarah.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you, colleagues. Are we ready to begin, colleagues, or should we proceed with the poll while we wait?
Hi, Refilwe. Professor is joined now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm so sorry.
Welcome, ma'am. No, that is not a problem. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, my sister.
We are looking forward to your address, so please kindly go ahead.
Thank you. I'm in between. Okay. Thank you very much. I stand on existing.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind to kindly turn on your video, please?
That's my face. I'm sweating, so I do not want to put it on. Glad. So that is my face. Bonjour à tous. Thank you very much. I stand on existing protocol. I don't know. Voila. I can see myself better now. So I stand on existing protocol and acknowledge all the participants in this meeting, all stakeholders on this important thematic that we are having. I am to give a keynote address on the plight of OOSC and its impact on the continent's socio-economic development. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from Yaoundé, Cameroon. Over 97.5 million in Africa are out of school, with 52 million being girls. Sadly, this number continues to snowball with the rising demand for education on the continent. Consequently, these millions of children are left to face an uncertain future as their economic and social prospects become daunting. This is our mission in FAWE, the Forum of African Women Educationists, as well as the vision of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. If we are speaking to the Africa that we want, the Africa that is an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its competent and skilled citizens, able to play in the global arena, we need to address the issue of the girl child in Africa. And that is why the African Union came up with the International Center for the Education of Female and Girls, commonly known as the African Union CFR. Africa is struggling to grow economically. This is exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic that has led to profound economic impacts on the continent. One of the key factors that continue to hinder Africa's growth is, I'm sorry, where am I? Is that voice coming in? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes,
The other
okay,
meeting, I'm
we
sorry.
can hear you now.
Oh, okay. So one of the key factors that continue to hinder Africa's growth is the disparities in education due to gender discrimination, disasters, migration, armed conflicts, extreme poverty, child labor, teenage pregnancies, and early and forced child marriages. We can all agree that all these socioeconomic factors negatively impact the achievement of the SDGs and the development of Africa, particularly Agenda 2063, aspiration number 6, which no doubt significantly contributes to leaving children behind. The Agenda 2063, aspiration number 6, speaks of the development of women and girls and youth, particularly in the areas of education, bringing in these kids on the center and making sure they have the right education. Research such as that conducted by UNCTAD 2020 on least developed countries, the Committee for Development Policy continue to emphasize the irrefutable correlation between education and the development of a country. And this is one of the key differentiating factors between developed and underdeveloped countries. The more educated the population, the smarter and more informed the citizens are, which consequently boosts economic growth and increases countries' GDP. An African proverb says, if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. So there is need for us to look into this, particularly with the pandemic that is ongoing, where many schools have been closed and many families have been left to the messes of the pandemic, and many of these girls are no longer in school. This direct correlation between education and the development of Africa necessitates the urgency towards systems strengthening in education, increased financing for equitable access to quality education, education opportunities for out-of-school children who cannot enroll in formal education systems, and increase investment in continuous teacher professional development programs, especially in STEM subjects. This speaks to the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016-2025, where one of the thematics and the clusters is 1, teacher development, 2, early childhood education development, and then 3, STEM, and of course, ICT. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, stakeholders, as an agent of change, we can all agree that education is a social institution that acts as a catalyst in complementing and driving development and providing children with a solid foundation for their holistic development. In this wise, our father, Madimba Nelson Mandela, once said, education is the greatest weapon that can transform the world. It is only through education that the daughter of a poor farmer can become a minister, etc. in the country. Therefore, education provides an enabling environment for children to acquire knowledge and skills, empowers them to make informed decisions to become active and responsible citizens. That is why under the African Union too, we promoted the African School Feeding Day, homegrown school feeding for the kids to have a balanced diet. It further improves health outcomes and significantly contribute to the social stability and long-term economic growth of the continent. You might want to ask, how does it improve health outcomes? It will improve health outcomes because these kids are trained, and sometimes schools invite the health facility to come and give immunization and vaccines to children at these early ages. I've seen it being done to my kids in school. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we need to speak to the crucial role in breaking the cycle of poverty in Africa. I am very mindful that the right to equitable and quality education is a fundamental human right that must be afforded to all children in all settings, not all children in all settings, if we are to respect them or expect them to make a meaningful contribution to the continent's socioeconomic development. We need to move from lip service, from eye service, to start implementing. We need implementation on the ground in order to boost the education of kids that will make them speak to the continent's socio-economic development. Agenda 2063 is not far again. If we do not build the right foundations, then definitely the house on which we stand will collapse. Thus, as governments, policymakers, civil society, educators, the private sector, and parents, we need to make deliberate and collective efforts to invest in education for all children in Africa. It is a responsibility. We must take it as our responsibility and to work together in accelerating effective and sustainable solutions towards lack of access to quality education and increased inequalities in education, particularly for girls who are the most marginalized citizens on the continent. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when we invest in education for all children, we are surely making a sustainable investment for the continent. This is a goal for the Graça Machel Trust and its partners through the Back2School Research Project aimed at generating evidence in supporting upscaling accelerated learning models for out-of-school girls in Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia. I therefore call upon all key stakeholders to rally behind the Graça Machel Trust and its partners throughout the life cycle of this noble initiative. It is a responsibility that we must bear. It is your responsibility, it is my responsibility. And as we are working towards this effort, we are rewriting history. And history or posterity will remember us for what we did or what we failed to do. May God help us as we continue in our struggle to make Africa great. And the only way to make Africa great is to empower its citizens. And the girl child is a very important part of the Africa's population. Let's give them a life through this Back2School project. Thank you very much. I wish us very wonderful deliberations. And remember, Ubuntu, I am because you are. My existence depends on you, and your existence depends on me. Let's work together to make Africa great. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Agbo, for those words and for energizing us in a call to action that this is our continent and we are responsible for the future of our children. Thank you very much for that address.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you would have seen that our poll has been running throughout Professor's address. We will give you one more second to please tell us your understanding of the incidence of out-of-school children on our continent, and then we will share the results thereof. If there are any questions in the interim, we can take one question.
Hi, Refugee. There is one question that Benedette has posted, and she's asking what efforts are being made to ensure that children do not drop out of school due to extreme poverty and hunger?
Okay, I'm not sure if you heard that, madam. The question is, what efforts are being made to ensure that children do not drop out of school due to poverty and hunger?
Thank you very much for that question. In the African Union, when I was still commissioner, and then it's still ongoing with the present commissioner because I handed over last month, we have the program called Homegrown School Feeding. And this homegrown school feeding is under the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. And under this Continental Education Strategy for Africa, it is a 10-year plan in Agenda 2063 and one of the first phases. What is the importance of the homegrown school feeding? The African Union Head of States decided that it is important for children to have a meal in school, and giving them a meal in school will coerce and seduce some of them to come to school, particularly when they will stay at home from morning till night. Their parents have gone to the farm and are not yet back, and they will not have food in their tummy. So this homegrown school feeding became one of the great programs. And because of this, the African Union Head of States and member states decided to celebrate March 1st as the African School Feeding Day. And what do they do in this homegrown school feeding? The schools themselves use indigenous food to give nutritious feeding to the kids, one a day, free of charge. And many governments have bought it. We have over almost 40 countries implementing the homegrown school feeding. That is one part of it. Now, to get kids back to school, it's not just for them to go and sit in empty classrooms. We have to talk about teacher development. And the teachers, because the quality of the teacher will speak to the quality of the students or people that will come out of it. That is why under the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, we also have the teacher training program. We also have the Early Childhood Education Development that is co-sponsored by the Ministry of Education in Seychelles and other schools. Because for the homegrown school feeding, we co-partner with WFP and FAO, who are assisting us in these projects. So what we are doing is to work with the stakeholders to help member states implement the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. And just in this slide, look at what the Graça Machel Foundation is doing, bringing 3 countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, together, working on back-to-school projects in East Africa. I think this is noble, and we need to take example from what is being done by the Graça Machel Foundation. Also, the Forum of African Women Educationists is also working in implementation of this, of kids being in school, particularly the girl child. That is why we have a model school in Gaborone, that is where if a teenage girl is pregnant, she can still be allowed to go to school, because pregnancy is not an impediment to a child going to school. So we get them in those schools where they don't have to face any kind of stigmatization, that they will carry their pregnancy to term as well as continue their education. But parents also have responsibility. Stakeholders, government, policymakers. The problem with Africa is that we have a lot of policy, but we don't implement. We don't strategize to implement. And what we need on the ground is implementation. That is why I said we should not do lip service, eye service, etc. What I've seen most often is that we attend conferences, but the outcomes of those conferences, do they get to the member states? And when they get to the member states, do the ministers or the political stakeholders or the leaders in those various ministries go ahead to implement? At the end of the day, they say they don't have money, but I feel the issue is not money. I feel it should be a change of mentality, rescheduling the paradigm. There should be a narrative and a paradigm shift for us to move ahead. Because if we want to sleep well in the future, the kids of today, who we call the future leaders of tomorrow, have to be given the necessary acquired competencies and skills. So we all are in this business together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for that response. I hope that has answered you, Bernadette, in terms of all of the activities, including those of the African Union and the Graça Machel Trust to promote children's education. So I think, colleagues, we will now very quickly display your results in terms of your understanding of the incidence of out-of-school children before we give you the response in our introductory video. Okay, well done. It looks like the first question asked us how many girls in Africa of primary, lower, and upper secondary school are out of school, and the choices were 52, 32.6, or 258 million, and all those who responded actually responded correctly because the correct answer is in fact 52 million girls. Similarly, our second question, the main reason why we are here, was on, is there a need for research on how to scale accelerated learning programs in Africa? And all of you agreed that there is. So with that, it is my pleasure to allow us to view the introductory video for the Back to School project, which will discuss exactly what this project aims to achieve in the 3 countries. Thank you. Sorry, colleagues, we just need to turn on the sound. Apologies, colleagues. I think the sound is not audible.
Towards supporting the Global Partnership for Education, Knowledge, and Innovation Exchange. The aim is to generate evidence in support of scaling up accelerated learning models for out-of-school children, to facilitate the reintegration of out-of-school rural girls in Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia. These countries have been identified among many regions in Africa with disproportionately high levels of out-of-school children, mainly rural girls. According to UNESCO, in sub-Saharan Africa, over 32.6 million girls of primary and lower secondary school age are out of school. This increases to 52 million when considering girls of upper secondary school age. In Ethiopia, nearly 13.3 million children from the ages of 4 to 16 years are out of school, of which over 7 million are girls. In Kenya, nearly 1.8 million children and adolescents under the age of 17 years are out of school. In Tanzania, there are about 3.5 million out-of-school children aged between 7 and 17 years. But why are children, particularly girls, out of school? Girls face several constraints to accessing education: poverty, social and cultural practices such as early or forced marriages, and female genital mutilation. Violence at school or on the way to school, lack of toilets, household chores, and now COVID-19. In 2019, UNESCO reported that 32% of girls in Kenya aged 18 to 24 experienced sexual violence before the age of 18 from school teachers. Almost 40% of girls under the age of 18 are forced into marriage in Ethiopia. About 4% of girls in Tanzania are in some form of marriage arrangement. This increases to about 22.1% the time they reach 18 years. About 17% of minors in Kenya are child laborers, with the majority being aged between 5 and 17 years. Out-of-school children continue to face these issues, which have been further compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic, with many children not returning to school. There is therefore an urgent need to prioritize out-of-school children in education policies, programs, and budgets. What are we doing to address the problem? The Graça Machel Trust, in partnership with the Africa Child Policy Forum, are implementing a multi-country, multi-year program. It is aimed at generating knowledge and evidence on accelerated learning programs for out-of-school girls in support of refining, adapting, and scaling up improved models and practices in 3 countries. The Back2School Research Project will evaluate the existing program in Tanzania called COBET, which aimed at bringing out-of-school girls back to school, identify strengths and weaknesses of the existing COBET model, work to refine this model by using better strategies, tools, and solutions from countries of Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia. We will then look for strategies to adapt the refined program to fit the respective local context in the 3 countries and see how it can be scaled up. Why the COBET model?
The Back2School Research Project is an excellent way to find how best we can integrate evidence from the existing COBET done in Tanzania and apply it to Ethiopia and Kenya. The evidence from this research will help us develop an innovative and enhanced learning model that can serve as a learning tool and best practice example in Africa and the rest of the world. By the end of the project, therefore, we should have generated knowledge on how to adapt, scale, and implement the enhanced learning model, and education stakeholders in the 3 countries would have the interest and skill to implement and scale the model. This will also help formulate policies that are being put in place to reintegrate children, particularly girls, back into mainstream education system to improve their socio-economic conditions.
Despite worldwide commitments made through Sustainable Development Goal number 4, primarily to provide universal primary and secondary education to all children, there's been a little progress in reducing the number of out-of-school children in sub-Saharan Africa. Thus, by reintegrating girls back into mainstream education, the Back2School project is unquestionably contributing towards empowering and enabling a new generation of young women in Africa to make meaningful contributions to the continent's social, economic, and cultural transformation.
Join us in generating evidence on the effectiveness of the refined accelerated learning models in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania.
Thank you. So as you would have seen from the video, the Back2School project is an action research project where we are gathering evidence on accelerated learning models, including the COBET model in Tanzania, and integrating that evidence with existing evidence from Kenya and Ethiopia in order to develop an enhanced model that we would believe, according to that evidence, can integrate more out-of-school girls into education. So to delve further into this conversation, we will now go into our panel discussion, where we have 4 esteemed panelists, 3 of whom are from the representative countries, to discuss the existing accelerated learning models and what critical learnings already exist as evidence, which this project will be able to build on. So I would like to invite the 4 panelists to please kindly introduce themselves to our participants. Please kindly turn on your videos as you do your introduction, and then we can proceed with the discussion. We can start with Dr. Sam Ngaruya. Sorry, Dr. Ngaruya, if you're speaking, you're on mute. In that case, can I ask Dr. Alemayu Hailu to please introduce yourself to the participants?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and hello, everyone. I am Alex from Ethiopia. I live in Addis, and I'm working for Readiness Fund as Ethiopia Country Director and Regional Strategic Advisor. The Readiness Fund is a US-based international NGO committed to providing transformative education to marginalized children in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hailu, and welcome. Welcome to the panel. Can I please welcome Reverend Bishop Michael Musonganzila to please introduce himself?
Thank you, Madam. I am Bishop Michael Msonganzila, the Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Musoma. I've been in contact with the Graça Machel Trust for about 5 years ago, and Mama Graça was very interested to visit this place and find a camp where girls were very much suffering from the traditional culture of female genital mutilation. And the church fights against this discrimination and suffering. And so she got interested to work with me, especially in bringing the value of education as the principal factor of transforming the society. And that's where I am up to now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend. And finally, can we ask Ms. Dina Lomovsky to please introduce yourself to the participants?
Yes, hello, I'm Dina Lomovsky. I am a international development consultant based in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm a sociologist by training, but I'm a practicing evaluator and researcher. I'm a co-founder of Southern Hemisphere and one of the managing members now, and we are a firm that is committed to achieving social justice through better evidence-informed programming and policy. And for this particular task, I am acting as a scaling advisor, which is very exciting. We're talking more about that later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lomovsky. So to kick us off on our discussion, I would ask our panelists to please explain to the audience what are some existing accelerated learning models in your respective countries, and what have been the main outcomes and learnings from the implementation of those models. We can start with you, Dr. Hailu.
Thank you. Am I allowed?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't think I'm in a position to review all existing accelerated learning programs in Ethiopia, but I can cite some of the major ones, like 3 or 4 of them. The first one is, which is widely known, Alternative Basic Education, so-called ABE program, which condenses grade 1 to 4 curriculum into 3 years to bring out-of-school children in remote areas back to school and place them at grade 5 level. And the second one is Accelerated School Readiness Program, which is meant to prepare preschool age children for schooling. And it takes place during summertime, in Ethiopian summertime, July and August, so that these children will be ready for September schooling. And the third one is accelerated learning for emergency affected children. This is being practiced by many NGOs, and it's a kind of a catch-up program rather than accelerated learning program. It's being implemented in emergency areas. The fourth one, which I would like to share you in a better detail, is known as a Second Chance program, which is run by Readiness Fund, Ethiopia, my organization, and its partners in Ethiopia, Liberia, Ghana, and Lebanon. Second Chance is an education program that serves marginalized out-of-school children between the ages of 9 and 14. It uses accelerated learning program, actually. Accelerated Second Chance classes equip students with the core learning knowledge skills to ready them join their age peers the following year in grade 4. So the Second Chance model is being taught by local facilitators. Those are recruited from within the community. In one classroom, we keep 25 children seated in a group of 5. The Second Chance calendar is a bit intensive compared to conventional classes. It has like 7 hours lesson on weekdays and 4 hours lesson even on Saturdays. At the end of the year, these students, second chance students, take a placement exam developed and administered by local education authorities like district education offices. This final placement test would help district education offices to place these children on the appropriate grade level. Coming to the major outcomes, so far over 150,000 children, marginalized children, given a second chance in education only in Ethiopia. And of this, 90% of them transitioned to mainstream schools. And with recent assessment, we've confirmed that 82% of them are still attending classes. And 45% of these children are girls. You can imagine how big chance this is for girls who are marginalized. And over 4,000 young people from rural areas trained as teachers, as facilitators, and assigned as facilitators. The final one is a lesson. The lesson learned you've asked me. One of the lessons I've learned in the education sector, there is nothing new, truly speaking. Everything have been said, planned, or assumed to be executed. Most of the things are easier than said, easier said than done. And when people ask me what is unique in your pedagogy, I am really perplexed. I often say nothing is new. It's not what we are doing, that matters, but how we do with that matters, So the biggest lesson here is how is most important when it comes to pedagogy and really changing the life of children. Thank you. I would be very happy if you have any question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Hailo, and congratulations to yourselves as Luminous Fund for those results in terms of the number of children you've managed to reintegrate and retain back in mainstream education. Before we take any questions, we'll give a chance to the Reverend to please also respond in terms of existing accelerated learning models in Tanzania and what have been some of the key results and learnings in that country.
Thank you, Madam. Here in Tanzania, our learning model is known as COBET. And actually, it's divided into two items. The first one is known as COBET 1, which takes from age 7 to 13. And the second one is COBET 2, which takes from 14 years to 17 years. And so you can see that we are very happy to have benefited a lot from this program, simply because following our COVID centers, which are about 421, we managed to enroll about 23,000 students, or rather more girls, most of them girls, here in Mara region. And we are the most beneficiary area of Mara region and the Catholic Diocese of Musoma of the program which was introduced by Mama Graça Machel. So with this then, this model has about 4 core pillars. These 4 pillars are namely complementary basic education. The second one is essential package of care and support. The third one is referral and support system. And the fourth one is coordination. So we have practiced this with our first project of out-of-school children, which was a combination between stakeholders, the state, the church members, and different denominations, and Graça Machel. And we have benefited to see that a good numbers of girls and boys who dropped their primary school are now heading to secondary schools, and some are in colleges and universities. Now, coming to the present program, which we hope to apply the same method, the same methodology as to Back to School program. We think that we shall use the same model, the same COBET, and with the coordination between the government, the church, the Diocese of Musoma, and Graça Machel, we hope to register more than 26,000 students, particularly girls. And we are happy to see that we are trying to fight against the traditional cultures which actually eliminate girls from the schools. And this elimination is very systematic. Once girls go for female genital mutilation, and by the drop of the blood, they are counted to be mature and therefore ready to take responsibilities in the society. But this is a very strange way of judging one's maturity through the drop of blood. We want to judge one's maturity through the influence and the impact of education, because we believe that education can transform one's mind, one's mindset, one's culture, and one's behavior. We are very lucky to have the First Lady President in Tanzania, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, who has fully supported this program. And actually, in his first year, she has introduced a program of getting back to school all girls who were, let me call them, were victims of pregnancy. Now they are allowed to go back to school to continue with their education. And we believe that by this program, we shall have many educated and empowered future mothers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Reverend. And absolutely, we do agree with you in terms of the Graça Machel Trust and our partners on what really indicates a girl as being mature or a woman and ready to take her place in society is in large part influenced by her ability to access education. So thank you so much for those explanations. I've seen that there are a number of questions that have been coming in the chat, but as I say, we will have a chance towards the end of this session to address those as well as any other questions that might emerge from the audience at that time. So I would like now to go back to Dr. Hailu. If you could just let us know in terms of evidence, given that this is a research project that we are running, what evidence currently exists that you might know of on the effectiveness and ability to scale the accelerated learning model in Ethiopia?
Thank you again, Madam Moderator. I can cite some of the evidences, and our evidences are based on research. I can give you some of the researches that we have at hand. Some of the evidences include the longitudinal research, longitudinal comparative research done by the Sussex University, and the comparative analysis done by the two universities, Ethiopian universities, the Hawassa University and the Mekelle University on the same program. And there was also a process evaluation done by Professor Kwame from Open University. And also the Ministry of Education has done like a best practice assessment evaluation and many more. So my data is based on these researches. The major findings show that all these findings have consistent kind of results. Some of the results include, in terms of academic performance, for instance, about half, or to be precise, 44% of second chance children are highest achievers on standardized test. When compared to the conventional classroom, only 25% of conventional school students are higher achievers. If we check from the point of view of completion, persistence in the school, second chance children completed primary school at twice the rate of the other conventional schools. So to be precise, 56% for second chance program, 31% for conventional school. This means, in other words, this accelerated program is contributing to reduce dropout. One of our participants asked about dropout. So this contributed to reduce dropout. And the Sussex research find out that being overage increases the chance of dropping out quite significantly. For each additional increase in age, the chance of dropping out increases by about 30%. So if you appropriately place older children, so that is contributing also in a way to reduce a dropout. And also the program has also achieved successful result in resilience and among poorest households. The second chance children complete primary school at a much higher rate. So that is also one contribution. And in terms of happiness, second chance children are 2 times happier and confident than their counterpart in other schools. So owing all these results, the second chance model has been recognized by the Ministry of Education as a proven alternative model and included in the recent education sector development plan, which is a 6th one. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, first of all, the types of evidence and assessments, evaluations that have been done on the Second Chance project, and also the impressive results in terms of how the children have been performing. No doubt that will make a significant contribution to this project. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Hilu. And then back to Tanzania, back to you, Reverend. If you are able to share with us any evidence that exists in terms of the effectiveness of the COVID model and its ability to scale. Hello, Reverend, are you still there? Can you still hear us? Okay, it looks like we might have lost the Reverend for the time being. So we anyway will proceed in terms of the next portion of this discussion, and we will still be able to return to any questions that might have arisen, or if the Reverend is able to rejoin us, we will still give him a chance to share his remarks. Okay, so I hope you are still with us, colleagues. We have another, oh, there he is. Okay, Reverend, can you hear us?
Well, we were talking about the Yes, I hear you.
Yes, you can hear me. Okay, thank you so much. So the question is, what evidence currently exists on the effectiveness of the COVID model and its ability to scale?
Through this COVID model, the Diocese of Musoma and the whole region of Mara, of course, in collaboration with the government, the regional government, and the Graça Machel Trust, we have successfully identified and enrolled about 23,479 out-of-school children. And of this number, 60,560 are girls, and the rest are boys. And we enrolled this in about 421 COVID centers. So it's a proof that the program is very effective by getting a good number of boys and girls as participants. So this is very clearly demonstrated the demand and interest of out-of-school children who desperately needed a second chance to education. And therefore, we believe that the success of the project has generated more political will, commitment, and ownership from the regional government of Mara, Tanzania, and other key stakeholders to sustain the program. So we believe the results achieved through this model proved that with further refinement and improvement, it could serve as an alternative for effective reintegration of out-of-school girls into the mainstream educational system in Tanzania, and I believe in elsewhere in the world. So there is a big profit of getting a good number of girls and boys out of this program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for being able to share again some of the results which the COVID model has been able to achieve in terms of its outreach as well as the gender breakdown thereof. I would like to check with Dr. Sam if you are in a position to share any similar insights from the Kenyan context. Okay, it appears that Dr. Sam might still be having technical challenges. So in that case, before we move to the next segment on scaling research, we would actually like to get a sense from yourselves as the audience, what your understanding is of scaling research. So we'll just quickly launch the next poll to see where we lie on that. Thank you. So I think for many of us, including those of us in the project, this has proved to be quite a new concept. So we'll be interested to see from yourselves as the audience, whether this is something that you have come across. And if so, we would also be keen to hear your insights or experience with it. Okay, we'll give it one more minute before we close up. Okay, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to put your input in. So can we please have a look at the results in terms of our familiarity? So the question was on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 meaning you're basically an expert on scaling research, and 1 meaning that you're still a novice or a beginner. Where do we all lie in terms of our understanding of what that is? And it looks like we are more or less in the middle. So perhaps we've heard of scaling research, probably we've heard of scaling, but we'll probably benefit from the insights and the remarks that Dina is going to share with us shortly, which will give us a better understanding of this core approach, which we'll be employing in the Back to School project. So over to you, Dina.
Thanks very much. So I would put myself probably be somewhere between 1 and 3. I think scaling research is is still something that we're all exploring. A lot of people are talking about scaling, but what is scaling and what does it mean for our work? So I've been involved in development consulting for many years and evaluating pilot projects and making suggestions about how they could improve and how they could be implemented. But I think this question of scaling research is, and the way that particularly IDRC is thinking about it is different to how we've conventionally thought about scaling. People often talk about scaling up, it's about bigger, making the project bigger, or scaling out, reaching more people. But what we'd like to encourage is actually for us to think that bigger does not always mean greater impact. Because just scaling our actions, what we do, does not always result in scaling our impact. So I have listened to you talk about wonderful examples of impact that you have made, that has been achieved through your acceleration projects. Now, deciding how to scale that project, whether it should be to more schools, more countries, same number of sites, but many different children. So it is a choice, and that choice needs to be made because we've shown that we've shown within this particular, using our research results, we're showing that the model has a particular impact. But what if we decide to scale up or out and the quality goes down because the scale is just too big to manage? Then we're not actually increasing the impact. We're just increasing the number of activities. So we want to make sure that as we scale a research project, we are keeping it intact. We are keeping the key elements of that model that make it successful in place. And that might mean that we don't go big. It might mean that we actually need to go deeper in a different place. So let's say you're scaling to a place which has less resources and less access to sophisticated teaching methods or technology. Then it might mean that you actually need to provide more training and better quality control over the program rather than to scale it out. And that we call scaling deep. So to keep the impact the same is the really important thing that we want to think about when scaling research. So scaling science is an approach that focuses on scaling impact rather than actions. And in scaling science, we want to make sure that the new knowledge that is generated through research, is applied to a real world challenge and ensuring that the solution aims for impact at optimal scale. That's the kind of the term that we're thinking is scale can be optimal. There can be a right scale for something. This might already be part of your work. So, in fact, this project is about scaling an existing model and making sure that it achieves good results elsewhere. And the research results can be used to inform a new policy, improve program quality, or expand the access to programs or services for vulnerable children. The key is making sure that scaling isn't done for scaling's sake, that it is justified, that the beneficiaries see it as valuable, and that it is a coordinated effort amongst a variety of stakeholders so that that impact at scale can be achieved, at optimal scale. We want to make sure that the positive impacts achieved through the research are taken up beyond the research site. So you have managed through, at the end of this project, you will have demonstrated that it works. But now the idea is that it scales beyond your site. And that is really what we talk about when we talk about scaling research. It's beyond the pilot. I like to talk about beyond the pilot. We've seen many pilots in Africa over the years. So we want to move beyond the pilot and actually make sure that the results, if they prove to be positive, that impact is scaled. So how can scaling be incorporated into a research project about accelerated learning models? So the main message is that the project needs to be implemented with a scaling mindset. So what does this mean? For me, this means that an IDRC who put forward the idea of scaling science, or what other people are talking about, responsible scaling, is that bigger is not always better. we have to think about what scale is optimal. So at what point, what are your tipping points in your project, in your program, at which you're no longer achieving the successful impact that you want to achieve? Scaling is not always justified, right? It's not a given that we need to scale out or up or down or sideways. There has to be a good reason and demand for scaling. Scaling can be, doesn't always about size, it can be about scaling equity. So we could say, we intend to reach the most marginalized and vulnerable people. It can be about sustainability. It can be making sure that we're scaling the sustainability. We're going to focus on less sites, but we're going to make sure that they're all sustainable. So we can scale sustainability. We can scale magnitude to the variety of outcomes. We can say, look, we've got really good retention rates. We've got really good success in classes, but we actually also want to add 2 or 3 key outcomes to this project, you know, that these young women are getting employment or getting into further education and training or whatever it is. So you might be adding different elements to your program to increase the types of outcomes. So scale is not only size, it can be thinking about different things. Also, that scaling is a process. The project will interact with an evolving set of actors as you scale. So in the early stages of a research project, you might be working with one group of actors, but as you're wanting to scale, that set of actors might change. So you may be engaging with policymakers, for example, increasingly as you scale, as you're working towards uptake. But what's important is that you recognize, and I think you already do, that scaling is part of project implementation, is part of a broader system. And that you need to be drawing in the different actors of the system intentionally at key points. And there's a lot of coordination and strategic thinking that is involved around who are the right actors to scale and at what point do we bring them in and engage them. And the key message at this point is, and we're getting on the ground floor, is that scaling needs to be built in to every step of the project. So when you're thinking about designing your research tools, we're going to be asking those stakeholders about issues around scaling, you know, what we'll need, what kind of scaling, when, how will scaling happen, who might fund a scaling effort, and so on. And that's, we also want to be doing a kind of research on the scaling, so a kind of dynamic evaluation to make sure that the scaling itself is not having an unintended negative effect. But it might be drawing resources from other projects or programs, for example, that are also important. Might be, you know, as girls, more emphasis is put on girls going into school, you know, less emphasis on boys. There could be a number of unintended consequences that we don't want to have because we're focusing scaling on one aspect. So it's a process and has these many dimensions that one needs to think about when implementing a project, a scaling research project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dina. I think probably the biggest takeaway from that is more is not necessarily better. So as you said, I think traditionally, especially in the international development space, when we tend to think of scaling, we tend to think of more sites, more outreach, etc. But this approach to scaling research really forces us to think about what is the optimal or the best impact that we seek to achieve, and what level of scale and what type of scale will achieve that impact. So plenty for us to think about. But I'd like to now open it up. I've seen some hands going up, and I think we also have some questions in the chat. So I would love to please hear if there are any members of the audience who'd like to pose some questions to our panelists about anything that they were listening to that they found interesting. Please do go ahead. So I see Honorable Mushira Khattab, you have your hand up, so please do go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I really have listened with great interest and learned a lot, really. I just want to underline a few points that were mentioned because it's very, very important. What Dr. Hailo said about, it's not about what we do, It's about how we do it. I underline this. And if we can learn a lesson from COVID-19, is that we can do better with less cost. This is, I really want to second what you've said, Dr. Hailo. It's the quality, especially if we're dealing with marginalized children, we need to do everything with great quality. Otherwise, these kids will fall from the cracks. They will disappear, they will not benefit. Dina, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I don't know if you will agree with me. I actually implemented a lot of projects on the ground. I'm someone who's working in the field. Now we talk about scaling. And my question to you is, do you see scaling like piloting then mainstreaming? Because as someone who worked on the ground, usually you do pilots and finish there. And this is discrimination against the majority of children who need to be included in the pilot. So I do pilot to test the ground, and based on the result of the pilot project, I mainstream. And doing pilot and stopping there is not really conducive to, you know, to target the marginalized. So when we start a pilot with our eyes on mainstreaming, it's the perfect result of what you were trying to say, deeper, not bigger. So more quality, sharper focus, and diligent, independent, and transparent monitoring and evaluation. Thank you very much. I really benefited a lot, and I have implemented this girls-friendly schools. In the most marginalized, deprived areas, we built very small schools, but schools that centered around a quality teacher, a teacher who is very sensitive to the vulnerability of poorer girls, and a teacher who is capable to attract a very exhausted, tired young girl who has been helping her mom with house chores, or a boy working and then coming to school, that this teacher was sensitive enough to understand the agony of this child and help the child compensate or make up for lost opportunities. Thank you very much. These are just thoughts that came to my mind when I'm listening. It has been a very fruitful session, really. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your input.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador Khattab, for your question, first of all, but also sharing your experience in implementation. I think we can take one more question from the audience, and then we will give our panelists an opportunity to respond.
Okay, thanks, Refile. So we've got Eric who's got a comment, and then a question from Lydie, in that order.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead, Eric.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yes. Yes, I've seen here in Africa that there is a lot of rural areas, and there is many people that do not have access to schools because the schools are either far or they have no ways to get into school. So if we find a way to promote new businesses, to have new business in remote locations, in order to promote promote new schools, it will be worth it, because people will have schools very close to their home, as well as if we promote the teachers to be teachers, to study teaching, they can also be incentivized to, even if you have, let's say, a small house in a rural area, you can transform your house into a school. And for that to happen, you need to have a way to register a company and to open a business company, a schooling business company, in which it is, I'm not seeing many school businesses around the continent. It's basically mostly the government that is in charge of the schooling, and many people do not have a way to also get access to get into a particular school. And the teachers, they're not getting paid well. Many teachers, they've been receiving a very low salary, and I don't think that there is enough incentives to teachers, and that creates the whole problem, as well as the population also needs to know the various aspects that they make the girls not to go to school, as many people also don't know all of those aspects because of cultural issues. So it needs to be, it's the whole problem that I think the media has a huge impact in making that change, to make sure they will understand what is the problem, what is the issue.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for that feedback, for that comment. Do we still have, sorry, Caroline, one other question?
Yeah, it was Lydie.
Yes.
2 minutes.
Okay, yes. Hi, everyone, and thank you very much again for all the interesting discussion and feedback on different projects. My question refers to what Dina said about the fact that when we upscale, we want to focus on upscaling the impact and not necessarily always the focus on outputs or activities, or upscaling the activities of a project, which raised the question about how can we identify those impacts, how can we measure those impacts, and also how can we calculate the return, if I may say it like that, on those impacts, such that we can mobilize more investment in a sector such as education, where the impact are long-term, are not easy to identify clearly and to measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lydie. So perhaps if you're okay for us to begin with you, Dina, maybe with the two questions that were directed at you. The first one from Ambassador Khattab about just your thoughts about piloting versus mainstreaming, and then this last question in terms of measuring the scaling of impact.
Yes, thank you very much. So mainstreaming is a good way to think about an alternative framing of scaling, because what we want to see is that researchers are not doing to be totally cynical, are not just doing a pilot project, writing a journal article, and then getting more funding to do the next pilot project and publish the results. That makes us the play field for PhDs. That is not what we're in the business of. We actually want to improve lives and make sure that the results of these research projects are used to improve people's lives. So yes, if mainstreaming into government at whatever level is the way to go about it, then that would be the ideal. Another way would be to attract investment from other funders, development funders or development partners, to take forward the results of that particular project. So yeah, that's why I say beyond piloting. And I know since I recently did an evaluation of a project, also a research project, implementation research in Tanzania, and I remember one of the respondents said, our government doesn't allow pilots anymore. So now we're talking about implementation research. Because, yeah, one pilot after the other. So we want to move beyond that. In terms of measuring impact, well, I think that is what this particular initiative is all about. It's about this project that we're talking about today, because it is about looking at a model that exists, looking at the evidence that has been generated, seeing how to improve that model, to measure its effects, and then to see if it's worth scaling. So I also want to apologize for using the word impact. It's not my favorite word. It's the word that has been chosen to represent scaling science, but it's impact in the broadest sense of the word. So, you know, from any kind of positive effects and changes, like you were talking about, I think Dr. Halu, about, you know, girls having better, the girls from your project having better test scores and results. So there are ways to measure the results. You have to be very clear what your key performance indicators are, and then find the best method to monitor and to measure those results, and to see if you are in fact achieving them through your models.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dina. I know that we are quickly running out of time, so I would just like to give an opportunity to Dr. Hailu and the Reverend, in case you would like to make any response to some of the questions, as well as if you had any final remarks that you would like to make before we move to the final session.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think Dana's interesting presentation provoked me to say a few words about scaling. You know, the most important thing is what is that we want to scale, and when is the appropriate time to scale. And most of the time we use interchangeably some of the words like replicating, scaling, and mainstreaming, when these are different. Two major challenges I see in scaling, especially mainstreaming, when we NGOs work on some project and want to scale it up at a national level, I see two major challenges. One is a supply side challenge from our own problem. When we implement a pilot in a small sites, it's like a greenhouse. The greenhouse, you plant seedlings in a greenhouse where everything is controlled. But finally, when you want to transplant that seedling outside where there is harsh environment, and the likelihood of surviving will be very low. So wherever we pilot, it must be, you know, shoulderable by the system out there. So this is one challenge I see. The second challenge, the demand size challenge from the government, is that really expected to take up, is a high level of enthusiasm. Unless we manage the enthusiasm, it's very difficult. Most politicians would like to scale everything at once, and they want to see change overnight. So we have to manage such kind of enthusiasm in order to be effective. So these are the most important lessons that we have learned over the past time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Hailu. And then over to you, Reverend Msoganzila, in case you would like to offer any final remarks. We might unfortunately have lost our colleagues from Tanzania again. So thank you. Okay, yes.
I hear you. I have nothing to ask, but I would like to say thank you very much for inviting me for this participation, and I look forward for many sharings from different people who have participated in this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend, and also for being such a great partner to us as the Graça Machel Trust in working on the Out of School project in Mara. Thank you very much. So I'm very much aware that we are at time, so we will gather additional questions and comments that are in the chat and respond to you after the event. But I would like to give Honorable Mushira Khattab the chance now to please share with us the solidarity statement as we wrap up today's proceedings.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I really want to congratulate the Graça Machel Trust for having you as the, how can I say, the moderator of this great conversation that we've had today. It's truly an honor to represent the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child in the Back2School Research Scaling Project launch. As the committee's special rapporteur on the right to education, it's one of my roles to engage with organizations such as the Graça Machel Trust and the Africa Child Policy Forum to raise awareness and to better promote and protect children's rights to education, including out-of-school children. The African Committee of Experts on the Right and Welfare of the Child is an organ of the African Union established under Article 32 of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. The committee is mandated to promote and protect the rights and welfare of the child. We all know that the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 has led to nationwide closure of schools across all African countries, varying for periods between 3 weeks to indefinitely. If we can give examples, Ethiopia 151 weeks, Uganda 149, and these are among the top 20 countries with the highest number of days of full school closures in the period. Sorry, is my video not working?
No, we can see you. We can see you, Honorable Khattab.
You can see me. Ah, all right.
Yes.
Because I got a message that you want me to. So anyway, this prolonged school closure resulted in a large number of children being out of school, lack of an appropriate alternative education system, as well as lack of internet services in most African countries exacerbated the problem. Now, the right to be connected is being flagged, and this is one of the lessons that we have been talking about a few minutes ago. In recognition of the consequences of the pandemic on the rights and welfare of children in Africa, and noting the unprecedented nature of the pandemic and the measures taken to curb its spread, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child has, among other things, developed a guiding note for African Union member states on measures to be taken to ensure respect for children's rights during the pandemic. The committee in particular called upon member states of the African Union as the principal duty bearers under the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, in collaboration with partner organizations, to uphold the right to education by ensuring that the impact of the pandemic is minimized on accessing, transitioning, and completing education, creating platforms to facilitate tailored learning activities at home for children, taking deliberate action to redeem the lost academic time, responding to the needs of children with disabilities, among other vulnerable children, such as children on the move, children affected by armed conflict, children deprived of their liberty, children deprived of parental care, all vulnerable children, for planning for opening of schools, including by establishing mechanisms to ensure retention. And I underline retention. In Egypt, the biggest problem is school dropout, not school enrollment, but school dropout. So we have to ensure retention of all children, and in particular, in particular, children in vulnerable situations, such as girls at risk and the other categories of children that I have mentioned earlier. After issuing these guiding notes, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child has also undertaken an assessment of the impact of COVID-19 on the rights and welfare of the child based on consultations with selected member states, civil society organizations, and representatives of children on ongoing efforts to curb the impact of the pandemic on the rights and welfare of children. The assessment in particular highlighted that school closure not only increased child's rights violations, but have exacerbated existing inequalities. Children who are out of school are at greater risk of being abused, exploited, or recruited into armed groups, and for girls, forced to be married and be subjected to other forms of gender-based violence, and progressively unlikely ever return to school when classes reopens. Similar studies have also found out that beyond the economic precarity, the study of the hardest to reach adolescent girls in Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda found that 29% of girls had dropped out of school during COVID. More than half of these girls dropped out because they were or recently had been pregnant. And of the girls who were planning to return to school, 30% were pregnant. The committee, during its 37th ordinary session, decided to develop guidelines and strategies to assist governments in ensuring safe return of children to school during the pandemic. To this effect, the committee is currently engaged to develop guidelines on safe return of children to school during COVID-19 pandemic. The guidelines will support member states' actions to ensure back to school or safe return of children to school during the pandemic, which considers equity, resource implications, and feasibility. I hope the launch of the Back2School Research Project would contribute to the ongoing guideline development. Based on what I've heard so far, I'm sure it will. Lastly, I would like to highlight that the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child is a progressive, human rights instrument for our children, which contains critical provisions for the right to education, especially on Article 11. The article clearly stipulates that states parties to the present charter shall take all appropriate measures with a view to achieving the full realization of this right, and shall in particular take measures to encourage regular attendance at school and the reduction of dropout rates, as well as take special measures in respect of female, gifted, and disadvantaged children to ensure equal access to education for all sections of the community. Here I would like to flag that going to school means more for poorer children than just getting the right to education. It means enjoying healthcare, includes enjoying social protection and enlightened care, because most of these children live in poorer households, crowded, stressed parents. So schools means more than just providing education. The committee is ready to advance the rights of the child to education, guided by existing standards and instruments such as Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016-2025, in collaboration with CSOs. The committee is also interested in increasing its pool of CSOs that it works with as its work is growing and its special mechanisms are becoming operational on various thematic areas. I also therefore call on CSOs to work with the committee by applying for an observer status and utilizing the available avenues. I really thank you very, very much for such a fruitful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mushira Khattab, for those excellent remarks. And yes, the African Committee of Experts remains one of our most valued stakeholders. So thank you so much for your solidarity and your support. Okay, thank you. So we are over time, therefore, everyone, I know that some will have to leave, but I would like to move us very quickly to our partner in Kenya, Ms. Susan Kahinga of the Pan-African Research Services in Kenya, who will deliver for us our vote of thanks. But thank you very much, everybody, for such fruitful deliberations, and we really look forward to your support in this project and your collaboration as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Refilo, and good evening, everybody. I am happy today and proud on behalf of the Graça Machel Trust, the African Child Policy Forum, the Diocese of Musoma, and on behalf of Pan-African Research Services, I am happy to express our heartfelt gratitude to our guest speakers, Her Excellency Professor Sarah Anyang Agbor, Honorable Mushira Khattab, Dr. Sam Garoya, Reverend Bishop Msonganzila, Dr. Alex Hailu, and Ms. Dana, for your remarks during this launch. We are really grateful to have you here. We have gained a lot of insights on what is being done across the sphere from the Africa Child, ACERWC, the work that you're doing at the African Union level, the work that you're doing also. Very, very happy to be your part, be part of this event. We'll be definitely incorporating some of the recommendations that we've had from you into our Back2School Research Project. And I'd just like to reiterate a few remarks that have been made, by Her Excellency Professor Sarah, that there's definitely a direct correlation between education and the development of our continent, and thus the need to make investments in it. So we should remember that the more we invest in education, particularly for girls who are the most marginalized, then it has a direct impact on the growth of our economies. But also not to forget what Honorable Mushira Khattab has said and emphasized on the term quality, that as we think about it, then we need to think about the word quality for our education. Lastly, that what Professor Sarah said in terms of oneness, doing this together, a call for Ubuntu. I am because you are. I think we should take that home with us so that we work in solidarity. So I therefore call upon all of us as the African Union, the governments, civil society partners, private sector, the media, and parents to take concerted efforts to invest in accelerated learning programs for out-of-school children so that we ensure that no one is left behind. So thank you once again for joining us this afternoon. And it brings us to the exit or the end of our exciting launch, which we have learned so much from. Just to say that for more information on the project and those who would like to partner with us, please reach out to us through the email addresses. I'm sure we had provided some email addresses Caroline had, I'm sure, on the chat. And I want to say that I wish you a wonderful evening. Asante sana, kwaherini, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will continue to engage and keep in touch with you as we move forward.
Thank you, Caroline.
Au rafiki yetu ya MNDE